The following is a sponsored program paid for by First Alliance Credit Union. Welcome to Good Money Moves, featuring Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union and Andy Brownell. Here's Andy Brownell on Rochester's News Talk, 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Hello, time for Good Money Moves on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. I'm Andy Brownell, and I'm joined by Jenna Taubel, the Director of Brand and Digital Member Experience at First Alliance Credit Union. Hi, Jenna.
Hey, Andy.
Last week, we talked about gaining control of your credit card debt, hopefully eventually getting rid of it. What are we going to talk about today?
Yes. Well, if you can believe it, it is already the first week of October. And that means that Halloween is coming very soon.
Already. My goodness.
I know it. It's my daughter's favorite holiday. She loves dressing up, loves the candy. I bet. She loves being scared by things.
Is that right?
She does. She loves being scared by things. And talking about being scared and being fearful, you know, it is that time of year for everybody where some of our fears start to seem a little bit more real, and that includes financial fears. And when you work in the financial industry, as long as I have, it's been 10 years now, you notice that people have a lot of financial fears. Some of them real, some of them imagined. But for October, I would like to have an ongoing conversation with you, Andy, all about facing financial fears. And so we're going to be talking about why some of the things are scary, and then, like most scary things, we're going to turn on that proverbial light and show you why the things that you were maybe worried about aren't so scary after all.
All right, perfect. I think there's something about this time of the year, as you mentioned, the closer we get to the end of the year, I think it has something to do with that as far as financial fears. And it's just interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people do worry about money-related things. I don't know anybody who doesn't, to be honest with you. So I'm curious about what we're going to be talking about this week. What financial fear will we be taking on first?
Yeah, so today we're going to look at one financial beast that a lot of people are worried about these days, and that is debt.
Yep.
So, and we talked specifically last week about credit card debt, but debt in general is especially scary because of how fast it can sneak up on you. And again, this is especially true with things like high interest debt, like credit cards. And it's easy to spend more than you intend. And as we discussed last week, if you pay off less than you owe, you're going to find yourself that each credit card statement, it's getting bigger and bigger, and usually by more than you expected because of those high interest rates. And, you know, it just sneaks up on you, right? And it can jump out at you almost. And if you're, you know, in a situation where you have to rely on those credit cards, it can be even scarier, right? Because then you have to start thinking about how much more debt are you likely to accumulate, and how are you going to ultimately pay this off? These are big questions that start to really weigh on people and start to create a lot of fear and anxiety around their finances.
It's very, very true. And debt, I mean, I've experienced it can multiply. And if you're not keeping close track of it, and a lot of it is due to unexpected circumstances. You think 1 minute it's under control, and then something happens. You know, the car breaks down, or a medical thing, and the next thing you know, your seemingly smart plan is completely off the tracks.
Yes.
And it reminds me of horror movies where you turn away, or those commercials, right? Where you turn away just for a second, and then all of a sudden you turn back, and probably your daughter will enjoy it.
Yeah.
Monsters right behind you.
Yep.
And so why else is that scary, to use that term?
Yeah, well, debt is scary because it can seem really inescapable. Like, how do you get out from under it? A lot of times people just don't know the path forward. And if you can only make and afford to make those minimum payments on your credit cards, it seems like getting out of debt is going to take forever. And that if only you never charge anything else on your credit card, right? That you'll ever actually get out of it is the reality. But this also is true for things like student loans. Most people with student loans have tens of thousands of dollars that they've taken out and are trying to pay back in what can seem like an endless task.
Yeah.
It can take a long time for some people to pay those down, even given their best efforts. And of course, let's not forget to talk about payday loans, right? Those things are a horror show in comparison to credit card and student loan debt, right? And the companies will charge you giant fees for the loans that you take out, and you'll have to continue taking them out just to pay back what you borrowed. In a lot of cases, they're really, really not good companies, and they prey on people who already have money problems in most instances.
Well, that's the word used, predatory.
Yes, they are predatory lending. Absolutely. And then on top of that, debt is stressful, right? When you have debt, it's constantly on your mind. You're reminded of it every time you get a paycheck and have to use a big portion of it to pay that debt down. You're reminded of it when you get your mail, since there's likely a bill coming. You're reminded of it if you get a phone call, if you're in collections, because it's likely a collector calling. And you're reminded of your debt when you're buying something, since you know that this money maybe could have been used to pay down debt that you're trying to get out from under. And it just, that can, it can really, it will ruin you over time if it's not taken care of and managed properly. And so it's not something to take lightly. And if you are in a lot of debt, what are you going to do if you have a financial emergency? Where are you going to get the money? Because maybe you've already borrowed too much. You have nothing in savings, right?
And you will have that emergency. They're inevitable. It's part of life.
Exactly. Absolutely. You can't avoid them. Sometimes you're going to have them back to back to back, and it's just going to expound on each other. And, if you end up, in a difficult financial situation that damages your credit, are you ever going to be able to get approved for a loan again? Will you be able to get a credit card again? And what happens ultimately if you can't pay back all your debts? Do you have to declare bankruptcy and go nuclear? Are you going to have to sell off everything you own just to keep your house in some cases, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can look at debt and how it can affect you, and it's no wonder that it can feel like a really scary part of day-to-day living.
Yeah. Jenny, you just got me stressed out just talking about it.
I'm sorry.
Well, you're right, though. It's a slippery slope, as they say. It starts out really, really small, and then before you know it, it's this out-of-control beast. And I feel for, you mentioned the student loans, which are starting up right now.
Yeah, we just talked about that a couple of weeks ago, too. Mm-hmm.
And you have somebody who's been maybe just skirting by through all of this, and then you just piled this, $200 to $300 or more payment on top of it. Mm-hmm. It could be the donkey the straw that breaks the donkey's back at this point.
Yeah.
So add that to another one of your October monsters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this points out why kids enjoy being scared. It's fun for them, but this is actually really scary stuff. So
yes.
Tell you what, we'll take our break and we'll return and we'll talk more about debt and financial fears and the stress that's associated with not having your financial life in order. It's part of Good Money Moves this week with Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. I'm Andy Brownell on News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking Good Money Moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340, KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back to Good Money Moves, our Halloween edition. It's not Halloween yet, but we're getting close.
Mm-hmm.
And Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union is scaring me and stressing me out. Talking about our financial fears. And and you mentioned the nuclear option, which is what people, the end run of this whole deal, and you have to declare bankruptcy because you've gotten to the
Hmm.
point where you can't pay off the debt.
Hmm.
And plenty of people have had to do it. I know plenty of people who have had to, and I keep thinking about people who've lost their homes over the years.
Yeah.
And I look back to my grandparents' generation and the Great Depression, and we had the
Hmm.
Great Recession in 2008. I had relatives who were upside down in their homes.
Hmm.
Um, so how do you face it? Something as scary as debt.
Yeah. Well, the good news is in most cases, debt is manageable, and it may take some time to pay it down or gain control of it. It is possible. And so I think the important thing here is if you know you're in debt, the first thing you need to do, again, is just take time to really list those out and get a understanding of exactly how much you owe, what your monthly payments to each of those creditors is. You're going to want to include the interest that you're paying on each loan or credit card, and have an idea of really, again, how much you owe. What are the minimum payments? How fast will your balances grow if you are only making those minimum payments, right? So really taking some time to understand the debt that you have and where it's at is key to gaining control of it, because you can't gain control of something you're not focused on.
And
So you have to pay attention to it.
you bring up a good point too, that you're making those minimum payments on these credit cards, especially with interest
Hmm.
rates above 20%. Even if you don't use that credit card for anything additional at that minimum payment level,
Hmm.
your principal that you owe is going to grow because your payment isn't even enough to cover how much interest is charged each month.
In many cases, that
In
can be
many
very
cases,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so if you're just kind of starting to try to wrap your arms around your debt, something like the debt payoff kit that First Alliance Credit Union has in their resource center would be a great tool to use to help kind of get you a clearer picture of what you owe and really help you list out all of those debts in a really easy to understand manner. And I think the nice thing, again, about having that clear picture of how much you owe is that you can start figuring out how to pay it off. And you can use, again, one of that we talked about it last week and we've talked about it before on the show. There's, some of the popular payoff strategies like the snowball method where you pay off your smallest step first, or the avalanche/reverse snowball method where you pay off the largest balance first, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this, but you can't do any of those things until you understand where you're at. And of course, um, uh, putting together a spending plan or a monthly budget is going to be what you need to do as well to help you find that money you need to really aggressively pay down those debts. And again, if that is just too unmanageable and you're still not really sure where to start, other options, things like debt consolidation loans can help kind of bring some control to a lot of those different credit cards or different loans that you have sitting out there, and bring them into one single payment that can help you just feel a little bit more organized and in control of how to get that debt paid down quicker. And it'll, again, in a lot of cases, it can save you money if you have a lot of high interest debt. And it can also just give you a sense of some peace of mind knowing exactly when that debt's going to be paid down if you're paying it off on schedule, because it has that fixed term to it.
Right. And that I can see just psychologically how important that would be as far as stress is concerned, because
Mm-hmm.
once you've identified this amount of debt and identified how large the problem is, and you could put an end date to it.
Yeah.
Say, if I continue along this path and do this work, I will get there by whatever day it is. If it's 4 years, 5 years, or whatever, could be less
Mm-hmm.
than that. And another part of this is hopefully, if you are in this situation and listening, the sooner you get at it, the shorter amount of time you'll have to live with this nightmare
Exactly.
instead of ignoring
Exactly.
it and letting it build and build and build and build.
Yes.
And your
Yes.
ability to obtain things like a debt consolidation loan will be heightened at
Yeah,
that
that's a
point
great point.
because the problem won't be so insurmountable.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Andy. Yeah, the longer you let your debt go unmanaged and uncontrolled, the worse your situation will become. So the worst thing you can do is hide under the covers, and the best thing you can do is just again flip on that light and know that there's not actually monsters out there and that this is a manageable situation. It may not be a fun situation to manage. Nobody ever said this is a fun process, so don't think it's going to be a fun, but it is manageable.
All right, we're talking about your financial fears to go along with October and Halloween on Good Money Moves, and we'll continue in a moment on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Good Money Moves continues in moments with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union. This is News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM. We're talking Good Money Moves with Andy Brownell and Jenna Taubel from First Alliance Credit Union on Rochester's News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.
Welcome back to Good Money Moves. I'm Andy Brownell. We're with Jenna Taubel with First Alliance Credit Union. And the theme for this first week of October is fear, financial fears to be exact. I like your analogy too of identifying the problem by organizing yourself and figuring out exactly what you do owe and who you owe it to and how large the payments are and how high the interest rates are, to going down into the basement.
Yeah.
All the scary things in the basement until you turn the light on.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah, you're right though. Maybe that act alone is enough to dissipate some of the stress.
Exactly. And you may realize, oh, you know what? My debt isn't as out of control as I thought it was.
Right.
You know, I really could afford to put more towards this credit card and get it paid down without having to make a lot of sacrifices, because you just don't know until you take the time to review your situation. And that's the point where most people struggle to take that first step. But once you do, it is very eye-opening and quite frankly, very freeing, believe it or not.
Because so much of that stress is the fear of the unknown.
Yes, the anxiety. Yep.
And you don't want to look at it because you're afraid of what you will see.
Exactly.
Peel the Band-Aid off, right? Just like that.
Exactly.
Okay, so what if I'm really, really in debt and it did not, when I pulled the Band-Aid off or turned the light on, relieve stress? It made the stress a lot worse because my situation is that dire. What's the worst thing that happens and I have to declare bankruptcy? Yeah,
well, so bankruptcy is a whole other episode in and of itself, and no one certainly wants to be in that position. And it definitely it hurts to be there. It does. But I think it's important if you are in that position and this isn't something that you are feeling like may be the only solution. It's important to understand that bankruptcy is actually just a legal process that declares your debts as discharged and essentially stops your creditors from being able to make further attempts to collect them in some cases. So again, there's a lot that gets packed into here, so I'm going to give a quick overview of what this could mean. So regardless of if you're considering filing what's called Chapter 7, which is like a liquidation style bankruptcy that most people think of, or Chapter 13, which is really more of just an aggressive repayment plan around bankruptcy, there's some key things to think about. And so I'll start with the advantages. There are advantages to bankruptcy. Okay. There's a reason that it exists, and right. So it essentially is giving you a clean starting point to get your finances back on track, which in some cases is what's needed in order to be able to move forward. It stops your creditors from contacting you for payment, and bankruptcy can oftentimes be easier to explain to future lenders than a continued history of missed and late payments. And it does provide relief from a lot of unmanageable levels of debt. So there's benefit to bankruptcy.
That's
and yeah.
No, it's interesting that what you said, that for some lenders, it's easier to explain a bankruptcy than continued tardiness or late or
Hmm.
missed payments. What is that, a signal that you've finally taken stock of your situation and are dealing with it, and that's why they might have a more favorable view?
Right. And it does, and that kind of leads me to kind of the flip side of that, right? The kind of some of the disadvantages and why this is really what's considered a nuclear option for your to manage your debt, because you cannot discharge tax debts, first of all. You cannot discharge student loan debts. So if that
Ah.
was on your mind, you forget it. What it does do is it does impact your credit score, and it can affect it. It significantly decreases it, first of all. So your ability to access credit anytime shortly after that is going to be zero. And it will stay on your credit report for up to 10 years. And so when I say that it's maybe easier to explain to future lenders that you went through a bankruptcy 4 years ago versus continuing to make late payments for 4 years, right? That in that 4 year window, hopefully you have cleaned up your act a little bit and have been able to gain control over any debts that you have taken on or how you're managing your finances. And so that you're no
Okay.
longer having to continue to have those show up on your credit report.
So
Um,
yeah, you essentially haven't been able to get any more debt because you went through this.
Correct. Yeah. So again, every situation is different. And, just because a lender may understand you went through bankruptcy does not mean that they're still going to
Okay.
be willing to lend to you in 4 years. Again, everything is so situational, and it varies lender to lender and what their risk tolerance is for lending to people who have had bankruptcies on their credit report. But, I think a couple other things, and again, this is why this could be a whole nother show, but I think a couple other things to consider and really understand when it comes to bankruptcy as that nuclear option. Again, you're going to be required to close out all of your credit card accounts. You're not going to be able to access credit for quite some time. But the other piece of that is your name and financial status do become public record in most cases. And
Right.
so everybody's going to know.
It has to be
And
legally posted.
it does. It does. And in some cases, right, we talk about liquidation, you may lose some of your possessions, and your current lifestyle will change. So if you are in a situation where you feel like bankruptcy is the only option, the only solution to get out from under this debt situation that you're in for whatever reason, right? Again, life happens and bad things get thrown at good people. And sometimes that is just where you're at. Just make sure that you are talking with qualified attorney. It is a legal process that you have to go through, and you absolutely should work with an attorney to help you through that process.
And it, in general, sounds like something you really, really want to avoid.
Yes, yes. Try everything else first. Even try it multiple times if you have to.
Yeah. Well, great information, Jenna, as always.
Yes.
And as always, there's a lot more out there, especially when you're talking about bankruptcy, uh, that people can research on their own. And I imagine you have some ideas on where we might be able to find out some more information.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, I encourage our listeners to visit our website, firstalliancecu.com. You can subscribe to our blog. We release new financial tips and advice there every week. You can listen to past episodes of this show at firstalliancecu.com/podcast or on krocnews.com. You can subscribe to Good Money Moves on Apple, Google, and Spotify. And if you love our show, please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. If you have a financial topic you would like us to cover on Good Money Moves, please send me an email at marketing@firstalliancecu.com. And of course, I strongly encourage you to reach out to our team at First Alliance Credit Union so that they can help you start making good money moves today.
And of course, this is First Alliance Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA and an equal housing lender. And Jenna, more than just October being a great time to discuss fears because of
Mm-hmm.
Halloween and the incoming winter weather. Didn't
Yeah.
even mention that. I was thinking about how much people spend on Halloween nowadays as well. It has become
Yeah,
a multi-billion-dollar enterprise,
it's so
and
true.
the costumes, the candy, the whole works. So if you're already struggling financially, you might want to
Hmm.
shut the lights off that night.
Yeah.
Pretend you're
Yeah.
not home.
To be honest with you, Andy,
And
one of my financial goals in life is to be able to convert my home into a haunted house at
okay,
Halloween. So,
well, you and my wife have a lot in common. A lot. You will not believe how much Halloweenery, I would call it, we have stored around the place. That's another reason I'm a little frightened of October. All right. Until next week, we'll have another episode. Thank you so much, Jenna.
Of course.
All right. This has been Good Money Moves on News Talk 1340 KROC AM and 96.9 FM.